and get the recording in the future. So thank you again for joining us. And Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you for some introduction and take it away.
All right, hello, thank you. Thank you, Scott, and so nice to meet everyone. My name is Rachel Wellman, and actually I do have an introductory slide here, but we are going to be looking at, Scott and I, at some responses from students at the summit in Broward County. So just a little bit about me. My background actually started in science. My PhD is in ecosystem science and management. I'm technically an ecologist and biogeochemist. I studied climate change and how it was affecting the post-oak savanna grasslands within Texas, in East Texas, and found some really interesting things. But I'm actually a Florida native, and so I ended up moving down to Florida with my mom and being with her for her last couple of years, which was a blessing. And it also changed my career trajectory. So I moved away from research and being in science full time to then taking that knowledge to the classroom. And that's also been a blessing. I've been in classrooms for the last 10 years. I actually was a STEM coordinator for K through 5 for 650 kids at one point, working with Science on a Sphere. That's what's behind me in my background. It's a NOAA technology. And I also taught high school ACE courses, environmental management, as well as marine science. And then I collaborated with FAU, Pine Jog Environmental Education Center, part of the College of Education here we're actually in West Palm Beach. The main campus is in Boca, but our office is in West Palm Beach. And we were the recipients of a 3-year grant that was through NOAA Environmental Literacy Program. And we were able to implement a program that I helped develop called Climate Ready. And that's where everything kind of fell into place. My knowledge of science and my experience as an educator. And so I took a full-time position with FAU Pine Jog to be a program coordinator. And I do instruct here at FAU. I have a dual enrollment course that teaches the Climate Ready curriculum, which that grant ended last September. So we're moving forward with a fee-based version, and I'm happy to say I have 21 students registered for this summer starting in July. So that's me, and then this slide, my contact info is there. So please feel free to contact me if you have questions. And I'll turn it over to Scott to introduce.
Yeah, thank you. Just a few quick words about me. My background is in environmental and science education. I actually, like David, I got my start in elementary education and just got kind of curious about how kids learn, and then sort of ended up doing some work in the field of sort of looking at children's learning, and then wanted to go back and end up teaching some science and environmental ed that way. And in fact, I most of that time was actually involved with the teacher ed program in elementary science education. So like David, working with pre-service teachers, although I guess the system, I'm not sure what the system is in Georgia, actually, now that I think about it, but in Florida, you can actually get a bachelor's degree in elementary ed. So I work a lot with folks who are on their way to a bachelor's degree here in Florida, and teaching some science ed courses for those folks. And then actually ended up with at FAU. Everybody seems to have an FAU connection here, and I was actually teaching at FAU for a couple of years there with their environmental ed master's degree program with some of the environmental ed courses. And then the last few years, I've gotten interested in some of these issues about climate education and how that factors into what we're doing, and what's the difference between climate education and some of these other areas, and how does that tie into some of our social and climate justice issues? So that's sort of been at the forefront, and Rachel's been part of sort of this story about, well, what are we doing about this in Florida, and how do we put together an organization that will support educators as they're working on climate education in the classroom. As many of you know, it's a bit of a challenge here in Florida to talk about climate at all, and of course we've got some issues with the challenge of education being under attack in a number of ways. So it's been an interesting ride. I guess we've sort of had this group for about a year, and then part of the issue that we identified is sort of asking students, as Rachel will talk about in a minute, what do they want in climate education? So as we get into that, we'll be exploring that with some of these students. So Rachel, back to you.
Sure, thank you. And I love this picture of you, I must say, with the turkey. Is this at a pine jog, actually? This looks like a pine jog shot.
It is a pine jog. That
Yeah.
was a different hat I was wearing in the area of food issues. So we had an event there at Pine Jog many years ago, talking about food and and the impact on the environment. So that was I really like this turkey, very friendly turkey.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Something that we added on our slide here is a climate story. If you haven't heard of that, it's a lesson actually that is taught to help folks and students kind of relate to their position or their how they see climate within their lives and their community. And so Scott and I are sharing our climate stories there in that slide. There's a link. And actually, I believe you're sharing the PowerPoint or slideshow. Is that correct? We have a way of doing that. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah,
Okay.
we could add that if we wanted to, thinking about revising the website. That's always a good item to be able to add some
Okay.
slideshows to that, right?
Yeah, awesome. Okay, great. So didn't want to spend too much time on that, of course. So moving right along, because what we were hoping with this wonderful group is that we can have a bit of a discussion about this. Scott approached me, I guess, in December of last year, and there was a call for presenters at the 6th Annual Broward Youth Climate Summit. And if you're not too familiar with this, I mean, just as it says, there really were about 900 students from all over Broward County. They were bused in with chaperones from each individual school. It was very well organized. It was amazing. And it was the sixth time that they've done this, one of which I know at least one was online. And it does provide a nice platform for these students to learn about climate science, environmental sustainability, talk with experts and other community partners. And even I think there was someone from Coconut Creek speaking about Coconut Creek. I believe it was the vice mayor that was there, and she actually came by our table. So it was a really neat experience. But what we wanted to do in terms of this particular session was asking students, because we had a group of let's see, did it? I'm now realizing we had a group, two separate groups, and I'll go over that in a moment. But we wanted to ask students, how can we improve climate education to help communities thrive in a future with a different climate? And so we came up with this lesson plan, which we're happy to share, and of course, edit, whatever. So this is how we walked these students through, because it was a very, very short amount of time. We didn't have time to connect with these students, to, do a lot of introduction. We had 30 minutes and that's it. And so that's why you see like the 5 minutes max, 2 minutes, etc. And so in the first couple of minutes, they walked in, we had them to properly, systematically put them in groups. We had them pick a popsicle stick, something we used to do in some other classes, and then put them in different groups 1 through 5. And then we did a quick introduction of ourselves. Scott and I did a version of our introduction. And then we gave the students 12 minutes with their group to discuss groups, assigned question, and make notes on their poster. And so there were 5 assigned questions, which I will highlight in just a moment. And we also just kind of wanted to color coordinate it. Again, we only had 30 minutes, so we needed some way of really doing a nice job of categorizing and packaging where these answers were coming from, the students that were together working on each question. So for example, you can kind of see group 1 there was blue. So each color, or each group had a color and that one color marker. 5 minutes after that, giving them time to write on their posters. Something I do want to mention, it's not just words that we were putting out there too, because there are visual thinkers, right? Auditory, etc., or learners. And so we wanted the students to express themselves. If they couldn't put it into the proper words, maybe they had a hard time of coming up with a nice sentence. We opened it up to any kind of sketches or diagrams that came to mind to express themselves. So after that 12 minutes, they had 5 minutes with their group to go around the room with the same color that they had, and they walked around each of the other 4 posters, reaching each of the questions, and then adding a little bit to those posters if they wanted to contribute to those questions. And then the final 6 minutes, returning to the seat and then opening the discussion to wrap up the activity. So it really was a whirlwind. And this was brand new. So, this is the first time that we have data on it, but, we'd like to have a nice discussion among you, our educators. We did provide one other poster, although everything happened so fast the first time we did it because we had 2 rounds of students. We failed to ask them to contribute to the poll, but we did get the second round to contribute. And the poll was, how would you rate climate change education at your school and in your classes? And so they were to use their marker to put a check or a tick or whatever in which category, and that way we were able to quantify. So looking at it a little bit better, so that piece of paper on the left, by the way, that paper was given to each student. We provided QR codes to get more information about the stuff that we've done. So if they wanted to contact us and reach us, and also a space to write in any notes. So here are our 5 questions. So again, on each poster, there's 1 question. So group 1 had, what do you think the goals of climate education should be for middle school and high school students? Group 2, what are the best approaches to teaching and learning about climate change for middle school and high school students? Group 3, how do you think climate education can be improved to help further slow climate change and meet the needs of a living world with a different climate? Group 4, what kind of materials and resources do you think would be helpful for teachers and students to learn or teach or learn about changing climate? And lastly, how do you think your future careers and lives will be impacted by climate change? So going into this, we didn't really know what kind of audience we were going to get until just about right before the event. And we got our assignment. We had 30 students from South Plantation High School. And then the second round was 25 students from South Broward High School. And here are some nice images of both. Actually, the top 3, those are from the South Plantation with the aqua shirts. They were both very uniform. They all had matching shirts. Both groups did. The group on the bottom, that's the one from South Broward. And there was that question that I mentioned, how would you rate climate change education? I thought this was interesting. So these responses actually came from South Broward. So most of them thought it was good or very good. I'm sad that we didn't get the first round.
Yeah,
So each,
and
I'm
I
sorry, go
just,
ahead.
oh, just for David's thoughts and maybe Leah and Susan know that these are kind of two of our schools in Broward County. They're really well known for their environmental ed programs. So these are among probably our most advanced students in the county, I would think, of, with respect to environmental education.
Mhm. So here are our results, and we do actually have this typed out. I had a graduate student in our office, or actually a group of graduate students transcribed what the students came up with, and so I can show you that a little better. But this is what they came up with. I wanted to show you their actual work because as I mentioned, if they wanted to draw pictures or diagrams. So lots of common things here. So group one, to be better, to educate. This is answering the question, what do you think the goals of climate education should be? Never too early to learn. This one on the right, to teach young people methods to protect the climate in their everyday lives and teach why it is important to protect and improve the environment. If young people start implementing ways to improve the environment, it is saving their future. And this group really spent some time on that statement, which is why I ended up putting it in bold, just kind of highlighting that. Being more environmentally friendly, having more climate change workshops, volunteering, field trips. Yep.
Rachel, just in the goal for doing some more interactive stuff, I just want to ask, Susan was smiling a little bit when she saw some of the answers there, I think. And I'm just a little curious about what she was thinking there. But if any of you have any comments or questions while we're going through this, if it's okay, Rachel, maybe people can raise those
Of course. Yeah.
interactive. Susan, do you have any? I was curious about what you were thinking when you saw those answers.
So, well, when I was like this reading the handwritten ones, I just love the idea of the smallest actions add up. Because again, before when I said that I've been really focused lately on the anxiety of it, it's that helplessness, right? And the whole idea that action is the antidote to despair. So whatever action it is, regardless of the size, and also working within a community, not to try to create tribes, but having that sense of, oh, there are other people like me, that really helps. And where I was laughing was about the transcription issue of, school is running hour. And I was like, brain, and then I was also thinking rotting and composting. And then transcription issue, control the weather. That just brought me back to General Hospital when the Cassidines had a machine to control the weather. For anybody who watched General Hospital, that was when I stopped watching it because it just went too far. So that was the giggle, was about the Cassidines and General Hospital. So sorry.
No, thank you.
Sorry, that's being recorded. I just realized.
It's
Sorry.
good. Thank you for that insight. Yeah.
Could you give a little more background about the context? Did the summit take place during the school day? Were the students in the classes that were teaching and about climate change? I mean, it's helpful to know, as you said, Scott, that these schools are known for a focus on this. Could you give a little more background on the if I wanted to do this in Athens, what would I need to do, or how would it happen?
So I think maybe, I don't know if this is a more of an organizational question, or you mean this lesson in particular, or the summit?
No, in general, the climate. Yeah, maybe I should. Where this is leading in my mind is this exportable as a model for other schools, and just get in broad strokes. How does it fit in with the normal school day and the operation of the school, and how you guys got in there to do this.
So this was a beautifully orchestrated event that took a lot of planning. I am familiar with other groups that do youth climate summits. This particular one was with the school district. It was organized by the folks that work within the district office. And I'm trying to remember the department, Scott, that they're in. Is it information and technology?
Yeah, there's a STEM group that's sort of within Broward County School District that really kind of spearheads this, along with actually the Broward County itself has some support along with the Museum of Science and Discovery here in downtown Fort Lauderdale. So there's sort of those three partners that kind of put this together. In this particular, that was sort of this day that, the students are selected well in advance and they, go down for the day and had this event. This particular year was at one of the high schools actually, that was not in session that day.
And I guess, to keep in mind, we're only sampling, 50 students out of the 900 that were there. Not all of them are from these schools, but this was probably actually, there were other students and within, I know, South Plantation, but there were other schools represented, not necessarily ones that had an environmental focus. And they did have actually 2 rounds. They had the secondary schools come in, and then they had primary schools that came in later. But it was on a school day, and it was a field trip for them. So, and it was a Friday.
May I interrupt for a moment?
Yes, please.
Aside from having this kind of a setup for the students that come, there were many other groups that were giving other kind of presentations, such as yours, in the gymnasium or in classrooms. And then there were also tabling events outside of that, where, as a matter of fact, our junior team was. And the students would come to the tables to find out what that particular group does and why, and what their interest was in climate change, and how they can participate and be helpful. And this is held every February of the year, and it's very, very well planned in advance by a whole committee. And as a matter of fact, Annika was invited to make a presentation such as yours, but there was a little bit of a misunderstanding in that, and it wound up becoming a tabling event instead. But she was going to do something on zero waste, and it was already finished in terms of her PowerPoint presentation and her ability to interchange with the students. But it turned out to be quite an event, and it is something that all the schools in Broward County have the opportunity of giving permission for their students to take the time off to go to this event. Not all of them do go because they have to be bused there and bused back, but a good deal of them do.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Are you able to see the slideshow? Okay, cool. Yep. So these are just photos of the years where Scott and I were, and we were just one session among others that were going on simultaneously. We did have we had a table in the beginning, which there were a couple pictures where we were in there. And then in the, I guess it was in the afternoon or later morning, this is when we did our sessions that we're discussing today.
So it was an all day event with a lot of different things going on. It was a collaborative effort across with the district and other museums. And who got this started? Where did it originate as an idea?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think this is what I can't remember how 7 or 8 of these that they've had so far. I don't know if it's that many, but it's a really amazing project. Actually, it's maybe one of the first in the country to actually do this kind of thing. And Miami actually liked the idea and started copying it down in Miami-Dade County. And I think it probably was the school district getting together with some of the folks at the county and museum. There was some initial meetings, and the idea was born out of that. I'm not exactly sure about who started it, but yeah, it's a great focus for the district for sure to be able to look at climate change as a summit, because we've got a multi-county compact that we have a summit for the 4 counties here in Southeast Florida, and that's been a great model for many areas in the country as well. So I think maybe that they were thinking about, well, we do this for our general population, now it's something for the students. And this is not an easy state to be looking at a climate summit, but I think a lot of folks in Southeast Florida are very much aware of the issues and want to do some work on it.
David, I'm going to jump in real quick. David, would you like us to send a connecting email between you and 2 or 3 of the STEM teachers that I know have been the lead organizers for the past couple of years?
Yeah, that would be great. And I probably should have said this in my introduction. I'm here to learn and support the effort. But I lead a project team within Third Act that's focused mainly on K-12 education. And we might be a conduit for others who might be interested in building on what has been going on there. Quite impressive for a number of years. And I guess I'll make a political statement. I think it's remarkable that it's going on in Florida, and we need, in some of our other states where there are tensions like this, this may be an alternative to some of the restrictions that are being placed on teachers to either not address climate issues, or in some cases, like Texas, I read an article this morning where it's being taken out of the textbooks and distorted misinformation is being substituted in its place legislatively. So I think it's significant that this is going on in Florida, where there are political forces that are maybe restricting teachers' options.
David,
Yeah,
if you put your email address in the chat,
I'll do that. Yeah,
I'll send off an email this evening. I
great.
wasn't involved in this year's, but I have from last year. I think it's the same organizers.
David, you're giving me an idea that maybe we should have some of the summit organizers at an FCEN presentation, and that's actually someone, I can pass that information along about some of the people who put this together to you, in case you're thinking that maybe Third Act, the Education Working Committee, might want to do something and have a presentation by these folks.
Yeah, I think that would be an excellent idea, and it's pretty impressive what you've been doing, and I think others would like to know about it, and hopefully think about ways that it might be implemented in other areas.
So it's really interesting, this conversation. I've actually been doing research on climate summits globally, and
really?
the leader of this really is probably the Wild Center within upstate New York. It all started with a student that wanted to do something called a climate summit, he called it, to get students together to talk about climate change and the issues that they're facing, and to hear from professionals, etc. And so it was the Wild Center that had the first few, and back in 2009, I think it was. And since then, because I've been watching the evolution of this, many summits globally now have sprung up, youth summits, that is. And what is interesting about Broward is that I would say this is probably the largest one of all of them. No one else has reported numbers of 900 students coming together. And I haven't actually found, well, there's a couple like clubs that are associated with schools, but not necessarily like a whole district being involved in one. So Broward definitely is taking it to the next level. I'd be happy to share some information about the Wild Center, because one thing they do is they track other summits around the world, and they have a whole toolkit that they created to help folks create their own youth climate summit. So I can share that as well. Great questions. Thank you. So kind of going back to the results, and and Scott and I did kind of synthesize a bit of this and put our own thoughts into, a summary, but we wanted to share their actual responses as well. And it's inspiring that they had so much to say from these questions, right? So the next one is, what are the best approaches to teaching and learning about climate change for middle school and high school? And so putting that in transcription here, a lot of techniques that were digital or media based, connecting on more relatable level, more fun activities, hope, educational TikToks. There's that YouTube media based, field trips, hands-on group activities. So getting outside of the classroom, right? Thinking outside of the box. How do you think climate education can be improved to help further slow climate change and meet the needs of living in a world with a different climate? So we're seeing social media again. Interesting that we see love and peace and love myself, field trips, kindness, using beach cleanups is actually, it's not directly related to fighting climate change, but what it does do is it gets these students together and working towards a common goal for, improving, the way of life, or improving that environment. And so I think even, that comes up all the time, but it's something easy that a student can do. Reduce and reusing the clubs, stop being wasteful. Question 4, what kinds of materials and resources do you think would be helpful for teachers and students to teach or learn about our changing climate? New computers, VR came up a couple times, field trips again, clubs, internships, environmentally focused programs, local case studies. And lastly, how do you think your future careers and lives would be impacted by climate change? So some sad faces there.
Mhm.
So hinder jobs like construction workers, hinder the diet, where temperature can affect plants, create more environment and computer-based jobs, less freshwater resources, the sea level rising, so creating jobs with fighting those or finding solutions for those. Interesting, someone said lifeguard, like you're swimming. More focused climate change jobs aimed at reversal and education of climate change, and remote jobs. So just some of our general observations from these questions and answers is that students were generally engaged. And so in this very short 30 minutes that we had with them, we were able to effectively get some responses from them that seemed meaningful of each of these questions, whether it's within their first 12 minutes together with a group, or walking around the room and sharing perspectives of other questions. Students seem to have a general understanding of climate change, and they seem to understand the science and at least how it was affecting them in Broward. Common themes that came throughout the activity were more hands-on experiences, field trips like they were doing as they were working on this activity. Action-based activities, this was something Susan even mentioned a moment ago, towards solutions such as beach cleanup. And that's why I put that asterisk there again, because it's not really related to climate change, but it helps students feel like they're being a part of something, and it's a good step forward. But more solutions-based, volunteerism, clubs, using technology to our advantage, such as websites, social media, YouTube, VR, etc. So what we were hoping to do in this session today is, and we can go back to any of these questions if you'd like, but as a teacher, we're maybe with just a teacher hat, how would you use this information and how would you feel, or would you feel comfortable using this lesson? How do you think your age group, students, visitors would react to this exercise? Or in general, what kind of themes did you see, or was there any part of it that you thought that stuck out to you? And with a researcher hat, perhaps, what other questions would you have? How would you do this differently? Or did you notice any unexpected results from these students' responses, or were they expected? We can start with.
So, Scott mentioned earlier that one of these schools, well, both schools, South Plantation and Broward South, were both very engaged. And I know that I personally am familiar with the plantation, the South Plantation, because Dr. Jody Berman, who's one of the teachers, by the way, David, South Plantation is a magnet school for earth science, maybe. I don't want to misrepresent what but they're all about climate and environmental sciences. And I don't recall the name of the program that Dr. Jody Berman used this year for her seniors, but they were asked, their senior project was to choose a topic of climate change and the environment that spoke the most to them, and for them to figure out or develop a program, a methodology of becoming more involved to actually implement change, whether it's to develop a program they could implement or to engage with their elected officials or business leaders, but to really take action to make change happen. So the only question that I'm thinking perhaps for next year's Youth Climate Summit, if this is done again, which I think it should be, just like this, that maybe somehow add in, if there's time, to query them about which subject matter within the idea of environmental conservation and climate change. Is there one topic that speaks to them the most, whether it's electric vehicles, solar, wind, geothermal, ocean currents, legislation? Maybe they want to become an advocate. Maybe they want to become an attorney, right? I haven't, that unfortunately, and especially in Florida, we have got one of the most litigious states known to mankind. Whatever that link is, I'll click on it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Susan. Thank you for that feedback. I mean, you made me think, okay, well, in these classes, and I'm not, I guess I need to learn more about these particular kids that we saw, but it makes me think, with the other out of the kinds of options that you talked about, it could be that communication, I'm thinking about David here, the writing or communication skills could certainly be part of the kind of work or choices that students might have that are for that kind of project. And, how do I, communicate better about climate change or something, or how do I write articles about it or something like that. I don't know if that's something they, Jody Berman, I think she's, they obviously heavy on the environmental science with their work in that school. But I suspect that they integrate that across subject areas, and it'd be interesting to learn, I guess, a little bit more about that particular program and the way those two schools do that in general.
I'm gonna jump in real quick and ask you guys for help or point me in the right direction. It's really funny that you just said communications, Scott, because on my way home today, I was stopped by one of my neighbor's kids that I actually taught to swim, ironic about the lifeguarding. And my scuba business should be skyrocketing, right? But all right, anyway. He's going off to Tampa Friday to start class. He just graduated high school and he's going to major in mass communications. And I exactly said to him, good, then you can spread the word about climate change. But I would love to be able to point him in the direction of, are there classes at the university level that within his major will focus on climate change or not? Truthfully, I do not have the desire to sit and now start going through the Tampa syllabus. I don't think I even have it, not syllabus, but the registrar's list of available courses. I don't think I even have access to it. But is there anything out there that's published, a template that I could use instead of having to rewrite it to say, hey, Nate, congratulations again on getting into, help us now do this, look for this. I don't know if there's anything that you guys are familiar with that I could send his way. Because he's going to University of Southern Florida, USF.
Is that
what it is?
USF? Yeah.
USF Tampa.
And maybe a way to frame that in a situation like that is certainly in the coursework in a program like communications, you're going to have to do projects. And to plant the seed that a project related to climate change might be something that they would consider doing in the context of a course where a project is required.
It's a great idea.
Coincidentally, this is the way the small world works, I guess. But and David, I mentioned this to you. We actually were through FCEN. We contacted there's a fairly new professor at USF, Alex Panos is her name, who works she works on literature and is her area, and she works in the teacher ed program, and and communication is part of her stuff that she works on there. So you and I should exchange some information about that.
I remember the name, but I've kind of forgotten about that connection. Where, what university was she at? Southern?
Yeah, she's at University of South Florida. So
yeah, I know some people there, and I think I remember looking up her name.
Right.
Line, but I've lost that connection. I'll have to reactivate it.
So I actually just did a quick search of University of South Florida climate change. It turns out there's a Patel College of Global Sustainability,
Right.
and they have a certificate program on climate mitigation and adaptation, which I think is wonderful. So that's just my initial search. Came up with
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, of course.
Or Nate doesn't know what's going to hit him tomorrow morning when I ring his doorbell on my way to work.
Just some more practical questions. Were the students across the high schools are what grades 9 through 12?
Yeah, and what I think they did, and maybe different this year, Rachel, I'm not sure, or maybe Leah knows, they assigned these schools to us as presenters. And I think in the past they've had you've had a choice where students would choose among the menu of things being presented that day, and they would do it. But this year was different. They said, okay, all the students from South Plantation, you'll be in this session from whatever the half hour was going to be, and then you'll leave, and then so and so will be the next group in that classroom. So we got all the kids from all the students from that particular school, followed by the next school, and in the past they've all had choices, so it would be a little bit of a different audience, I think.
They also tried to diversify it. They sent out invitations to a select group of high schools because, of course, they were going to be missing class. So the high school had to approve it. And I think there were about, as to my recollection, I believe there were about 10 high schools that were invited, and the schools had agreed to bring the students in and get them back to school. And I think for the students, I don't know if you had a different, Rachel, but the students were there from, I think, 8:30 in the morning until noon. And then there was a lunch break, and then they went back to their classrooms. This year, I believe they're extending it even further. I
Right,
mean,
they had,
this
they had,
next year.
oh, sorry. Yeah, I think they had both middle school and high school at this,
Yeah.
at the conference, but we just saw the two high school classes in
Right.
our session.
So
And part
in a
of it
larger
was-
sense, it was middle school through high school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But
Every-
they did have primary school students there later on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
every presentation had to be outlined and sent for approval prior to it happening. All the presentations had to be interactive to make sure the students were getting involved. And all of the students were given a little going away gift when they exited the room.
And it
So
was
then
across,
they went and visited the tables outside of the meeting rooms.
and I know they had a diversity of different topics, and including,
Right.
the arts and artists involved with sessions as well.
Correct.
Who is going to send me some information? Susan or?
Yeah,
So-
Susan, Susan will go ahead and do that, and I asked her actually to CC me as well, and then I'll add, to some of the, I know I have some contacts in both the county and among the STEM group that's involved with this as well. Lisa Milankovich, I don't know if
So-
Susan, if you know her, but she's sort of the key person that I know at the school district who's in charge of that.
I was
So-
sending it to Summer and Lisa. Exactly. Summer and Lisa and David, and then CCing you, Scott.
Okay.
And so the people like yourself were going to present, had to fill out some detailed description of what you were doing, and there were criteria that it had to conform to. Is there any kind of a brochure or program that is given to participants or?
I don't,
If there is, I would.
yeah, I'm
that
sure
would
there,
be
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
No, I don't think so. But
I think it was online, and I did send one. I sent 3 links in the chat window,
Okay.
and the second one should take you to the Broward
they have a
site.
website which you can get
Okay.
onto.
I
And
see.
each year they pick a different topic.
So a lot of the information that I'd be looking for are at the website, so that's great. Now all I have to do is figure out how to save the chat so I can see it. I'll copy it.
I ended up copying and pasting each of the links this is the second Zoom I've been on today that did not provide those lovely 3 dots at the bottom.
Oh, I
Like-
didn't think,
Yeah,
I thought it did, but yeah, but it'll send me, I'll be happy to pass it
Okay,
along
yeah, I
to you,
see it,
because
I
it will
see it.
save me a
Save
copy
the
of the
chat.
chat and it'll send it to me,
Go to
so.
Finder. Okay, there we go.
Well, if anyone sees a way to save the chat, let me know though, please.
Yeah, I have the 3 little dots and just saved. I don't know, it just saves it as a point in time, I guess.
So
No,
why-
no, it goes on your website. It goes on to your material that you can
Okay.
then access after the meeting.
Okay, gotcha.
Feeling very deprived that I don't have the 3 dots.
Yeah, I don't know why you don't, Susan. We're kind of
Obviously.
coming up on the hour here. I don't know if we wanna,
Well, I just
if you wanna
wanted one.
continue, yeah.
I just wanted one question. I guess, were there any initial reactions to the lesson that we ended up that we came up with? And any thoughts on maybe improving? I know there was Susan mentioned maybe a question to add. Was there anything else, any observations you'd like to share? Or have you done anything like this in the past? Or
I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to excuse myself. I have an obligation here at 7 o'clock. I'd love to go on talking and learning more about this, and thank you for allowing me to participate and inviting me, Scott. And it was nice to meet you all. And you know, let's help each other out here as things come along that we think might be of interest, and really appreciate all the good work that went into this event, and it's very impressive. And congratulations to all of you for pulling that all off. And the pictures show a lot that the students were very engaged, and this is the kind of thing we need to see more of. So just some parting words, and thank you for allowing me to participate.
Well,
And
thank you for joining, David. Thank you very much for joining
well,
us, and we'll be in
hopefully,
touch.
there will be a lot of nice things that come out of this. So,
Next
Appreciate
year,
it.
come on down, road trip.
yeah.
Nice meeting you, David, and good luck up there in Georgia. Get them involved
Thank
too.
you all for allowing me to participate, and good luck to all of you. And maybe we'll be in touch again.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining
Sure
us.
thing.
Hope to see you again.
And nice to meet you, Rachel.
You as well. Thank you. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
For the record,
Leah,
they
I'm
moved the
gonna-
three
I'm gonna-
dots to the top.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording right now. And Leah, if you want to hang on for a couple minutes and we can talk, at the beginning
Okay.
you had your session.